Ale, ale.
Ale.
Welcome, Brian.
Thank you so much, AR. How you doing?
I'm doing very well. Given the current circumstances, I think we're all trying to stay positive and productive.
You know something? You're right. We got to find something to do and be productive during this crazy time.
That is correct for sure. I'm super excited to have you. I think a lot of people already know that in addition to being into photography, I'm also into cycling as a former athlete. I've done, triathlons and cycling races. Pretty much once a year, I'll do a big ride. Like we've ridden from Santa Barbara to LA over a few days with a good group of Northern California riders from when I used to live there. So I'm doubly excited because we get to talk about a couple of things that I'm passionate about. So it's good news not only for biking fans that I think will be joining our chat, but also for photography fans. So if you're a photography fan, you may learn something about cycling. And if you're a cyclist, you're bound to learn something about photography. So I want to let Brian introduce himself more, but Brian is a sports photographer. He does all kinds of photography. He's not one-dimensional. He does street photography and a bunch of other stuff. But today, we're going to focus our chat on cycling because Brian is, I think, the official photographer for U.S. Cycling. He has an incredible body of work. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your background, Brian, how you ended up in cycling photography and what led you to this?
Well, first, let me just correct right there. I'm not U.S. Cycling's photographer. I mean, there's a few of us that shoot cycling full time here in the United States. It's not as big as it is in Europe. And lately, it's really gone downhill, and we'll get into that a little bit later. But my involvement in cycling got started years ago when I used to ride my bike all the time. I used to race. I loved it. I've always been a photographer. I mean, I quit school in 10th grade to do photography. Not that I encourage anybody to do that, stay in school, but I've done photography my whole life. And about, I'd say close to 15 years ago, I got the bug to really put my two passions together, cycling and photography. And from there, it's taken off. I've been so grateful and fortunate to shoot races all over the world, see different places, meet some really incredible people. The cycling family, the cycling community is very unique, special. There's a special camaraderie there between cyclists and people who work in the cycling world, and it's truly a remarkable and blessed life.
It is so nice. I too started the business as a hobby, and it's fortunate when we can do what we're passionate about so we don't really have to work. As a fan of cycling, and that's one of the questions that we're getting from the field as well, do you get caught up sometimes in the race and you find yourself torn between watching the action and capturing it?
Yeah, that's a good question. When I'm focused on my job, my work, I'm really about the image and creating what I do. That being said, I have a lot of friends now who are racers, and I want to see how they do. And some of the teams that I work with, I want to see how they're doing. And when you're doing long stage races, it's a daily grind, and you become part of it. You become part of the whole movement of cycling. So yeah, it's you do get involved every which way.
Yeah, it's hard to separate the two. So let me ask you this. Let's talk about equipment a little bit, the gear that you use. What are some of the cameras and lenses that you would use on a big race like a Tour of California, Tour de France? What equipment do you usually bring with you?
Well, up until quite recently, I've used, I'm a Nikon user, number one. Not to say anything about any of the other products. I've always been a Nikon guy. Use various lenses. I have with me when I travel approximately 8 lenses, 2 flashes,
Oh, wow.
just for various situations.
Okay. And do you have different settings? You know, obviously for some of your wider angles, some of your longer lenses, are there very specific settings that you like to prepare?
That's more of a spur of the moment type of thing. Like if you're shooting from a motorcycle during a race on cobbles where your vibration, I mean, you're going to want to shoot at a very high speed. I don't shoot with flash. Very rarely will I shoot with flash. Okay. I'm more of an available light type of guy. Not to say anything bad about flash. It's just not my style. It's not what I do. So I'll shoot at very high speeds. For motion, I'll shoot at low speeds. So it all depends on the actual image that I'm trying to portray. My portraits, I shoot at a very, a lot of times, some of my street photography, I'll shoot it at, 1.4, 1.8, 2.8, just as a look.
Okay. And there are so many amazing shots that we see from you. And I was wondering if you have shots in mind before you take them. In other words, I'm assuming that after a while you get the rhythm and the flow of the event, and there are certain moments that you're anticipating, and that you may even ride or see the scenery before the race. Are there shots that you think about, that you have to position yourself? And I'll have a couple of these shots, that I have in mind here. So shots like this, maybe you can walk us through some of these shots.
Sure.
And tell us the circumstances, maybe the settings, a little bit about what made these shots special for you.
Okay, that particular image that's on screen now, that was shot outside of Sacramento, the Tour of California. I forgot which stage it was, but the course itself on this particular stage wasn't as picturesque, and it was not as easy to pass the peloton as in other stages, just due to logistics. The road was very narrow, so it might take us quite a while to pass the peloton to get to another location. So once I pass the peloton, I'll look for a spot, something that's a little bit different, hence this shot. I think after the shot, it might have taken us about 20 minutes just to get past the peloton to set up for a next shot.
Okay. And then you got shots like this, which I'm sure are logistically busy.
That's actually one of my favorite shots. That was shot at the Tour of Turkey outside of Istanbul. And we made arrangements to go up inside this new bridge that was just built. And just from a different perspective, because when you do races, if you do the same races year in, year out, besides what you're assigned to do and you need to get, like if I'm working for a team, that's my specific goal there. I try to get shots I haven't gotten before, because otherwise it's repetitive.
Sure.
So this is a good example. So is that shot right there. I've shot in that location a few times, and there, as have a lot of other photographers, and some of the images are just incredible. That happens to be just a little bit different one. And you could move a couple meters away and get a different perspective.
Yeah, and I see we have some Turkey fans join the call as well. So yeah, that shot was shot in Turkey. This shot I love, and obviously you're playing with shutter here. Do you normally shoot on manual, or do you have specific settings that you have quick access buttons that you use?
That was shot on manual. That was shot in Quebec City a few years back at one of the World Tour races. That old Quebec City. It's a beautiful race. It's in September. But that was shot on manual, slow shutter speed, so you got the road there nice and crisp, but you got movement. and usually on the bike, I'll shoot at a high shutter speed. That's pretty much shutter priority.
Okay. Do you recall what the settings were, or what they may have been on a shot like this, where you
On this,
were able to get such definition on the cobble? You know, you got the passengers on the other side of the street, both in focus and still, and yet you get this incredible sense of movement on the picture.
that, my guess is that's probably at about 30th at around f8, give or take. So you got some focus close, you got some focus in the background, but the movement of the riders. And if you look at the wheel, in the front wheel, it looks like it's flat. It looks like a triangle. So I'm going to say that's probably about a 30th. Could even be been a 15th.
Yeah, it's a gorgeous shot.
Thank you.
I've noticed that there are equally beautiful shots. You know, like I can only imagine that this shot was beautiful in color, but you chose to do it black and white. How much post-production do you do? Do you have certain criteria on a shot like this?
You know, that was a color shot. I shoot all in color, but I have a certain style that I like to shoot. I like to bring out some things in black and white, throw in the contrast, just to make it a more dramatic image. That the nakedness of everything with the peloton going through just brought me that. I think it looks better in black and white. Personal preference.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. Are there any other particular shots? I mean, you shared with me some of your favorites, and I'm just kind of scrolling through. Are there others that you would like to tell a story, or that you can share a bit of a story about the shot?
There's one shot that I sent you of Peter Sagan. See, now that shot right there is the same shot that we looked at a little while ago from a different perspective. You know, that was Tour of Utah. That's also one of my favorite shots. It's beautiful. That's Peter Sagan right there at the Tour de France. But there's a shot of him that I sent you where that one right there.
Yeah.
That's one of my favorite pictures ever. That was after the 2017 Paris-Roubaix race. And right after, you know, for those who don't know about Paris-Roubaix, it's a long race. It's one of the classics, one of the cobblestone races. And that happened to be inside the bus after he was just drained. He was one of the favorites to win the race, which he did the following year. But he was the current world champion at the time. And there's a lot of emotion in that particular image. That happens to be one of my favorite images. And I've worked with Peter for quite some time, and that's great.
Yeah, I suspect that, you know, it also helps to develop a rapport and develop trust with a lot of the riders. And like we were saying earlier, you have to be able to separate the two, but at the same time, they have to trust you.
Absolutely.
In what you're doing, and allowing their guards down. Shifting the subject a little bit, let's talk a little bit about cycling itself. I think it was just announced today that because of the virus, they're postponing the Tour de France to later in the year, right? Like August, September?
Yes. It was supposed to be at the end of June. Because of the situation the world is living in, it's now postponed till the end of August. But also along that same point, so is the Giro d'Italia, so is the Vuelta, which is in Spain. It's changed the whole face of cycling, the whole the way we live it. I mean, we should be shooting races every weekend now. But for the past month and a half, since I think the first races to be canceled were Strade Bianche, which I was planning on shooting in Italy, I mean, there's been nothing. The UCI has shut down all races. And it's hard. You know, it's not just hard for me. It's hard for everybody. It's hard for the riders. It's hard for the teams. It's hard for the sponsors. But I do believe that we will overcome this in cycling. It's going to take a lot of effort, but it's doable because the community of cycling, they're passionate about the sport. I mean, it's a big passion.
I would suspect that it's very difficult to prepare, right? Because both psychologically, everybody's now on hold, their training trips, their routines, the team dynamic is all on hold. And so by even postponing the race, how the athletes prepare is going to have a huge impact. So it's almost a wild card year if the race indeed happens in
Oh,
August.
absolutely. I mean, riders are, a lot of them, and the majority of them are training at home on their stationary bikes. Some
Mm-hmm.
countries don't allow you to go outside. It's going to take to get to the level of where cyclists need to be to race at the Tour or any other race for that matter on that caliber. It's going to take a while, and I hope, I sincerely hope that the Tour will take place when it does. It would not surprise me, however, to see that it doesn't happen. And I definitely don't want that to happen. I think we need it. We need something to look forward to as well.
Right, right. Agreed. Yeah, one of the things that I enjoy about cycling is that not only do you get the enjoyment of nature and being outdoors and landscape and all that, but it also gives you time to reflect, be within yourself. So it's sort of cathartic in many ways. So I agree with you. Um, Let me ask a controversial question. You alluded to earlier that the sport in the U.S. has been declining a little bit. That some of the, like the Tour of California was canceled. So I guess my general question to you is, what do you think the sport needs, or what do you think was happening? How should it change to get back on the saddle, so to speak?
That's not an easy question to answer. There's a lot of variables that go into it. If you
Uh-huh.
if you look back at cycling during the 80s and the 90s, it was a lot bigger, even in the early 2000s. But a lot of races will start, and there's no continuation, and they'll stop after a few years. Right now, the only major big race left in the United States is the Tour of Utah, and however, that was just canceled for this year due to the coronavirus. We all look forward to the Tour of California. That was the biggie. And it was great to see everybody year in, year out. I don't really know what it's going to take. I think it's going to take something new, something big from either USA Cycling, from investors, to really put cycling back on the map where it should be, and it really needs to be. I would like to see it get back to its glory days.
Do you think that doping has had a huge negative impact on things like attendance, sponsorships? Is that a major problem in this, or are there too many to?
I don't think it's a major problem. There were issues with doping, but that's really, in a lot of sports, you're going to see that. Is it amplified in cycling? Yes. Is it cultural? Yes. But I think we can overcome that. Most of these riders are tested. Most of them are good, honest riders. So, if we can get each sport, and the thing is, cycling, it's all about the fans. These are sports you don't have to pay tickets to get into. You stand along the side of the road, you see these incredible athletes, at the top of their game. That one right there, that was a few years back, right before Chris Froome and Richie Porte crashed into the motorcycle. That was literally about 5 seconds before the crash. I was shooting it from above, but you could see how tight it was. And that's Peter at the Tour of California.
So we were sad to see that race canceled this year. We're hopeful.
Oh, everybody was. You and me both. There were teams, there were riders, there were sponsors, there were local municipalities and local businesses that were all bummed. But you know, it happened. It happened, and it's unfortunate. And I hope one day, one day it comes back. I really do, because I think we all loved it, and we're going to miss it. Yeah, fingers crossed.
Yeah, fingers crossed. So let me ask you this: do you have any tips for people that are looking to shoot sports, and particularly cycling, on whether it's gear, settings, frame of mind?
If I could give is a tip that was given to me when I was a kid: just go out and shoot. Go out and shoot, and see what you get. Learn from what you get, and just keep building on that. Get your own. I know a lot of my photographer colleagues would not hesitate in talking to students and youngsters really wanting to get into what we do.
Okay.
Yeah.
I want to open it up for questions as well. So if people in the audience have questions, feel free to send them our way, and we'll try to answer them. The other thing I wanted to ask you, Brian, is, I know that we're kind of on hold. How have you been staying busy? What have you been doing?
Oh, not a lot. First and foremost is safety, keeping myself safe, my family and friends safe. But something that I do besides my cycling photography is I do a lot of street photography, a lot of portraiture on the streets. A lot of my portraiture has to do with homeless. Wherever I am in the world, I like to go and really meet the people who are a little less fortunate than you and I like to hear their stories. So something I've done during this particular period is, in my car, I always carry some water, and I'll go to Smart and Final and carry a box of cookies or snacks or whatever. And in my cycling, when I travel for cycling, in the hotels that I stay at, I had this big collection of little mini soap bars, probably a couple hundred of them. I take from each of the hotels. So I keep that in the car, and I will just go and hand out to, sit and talk with them home and give them some water, hear their stories, and really build a relationship with them. Something I've been doing for a number of years now, but now, lately, it's a little bit different with the masks and keeping social distance. So you got to be safe, but they need to be heard. They need to be heard. We need to do something collectively to help people who are on the streets, who are less fortunate than us. And for me, what that is, that's telling their story.
Right. Yeah, that's actually something we've done with Outex as well. Is, historically, our covers were used by the FBI and by some government agencies to help protect crime scenes, ironically. So it helps prevent contamination of a scene. So if an investigator is wearing protective gear and gloves and masks and all that to prevent contamination of a crime scene, they will use Outex to maintain that. And we realized that even a lot of our users didn't realize that the camera can be an element of contagion. And so we had put out a quick video and a page on our website about using Outex to help protect against COVID. I know you do, that street type of photography. We have a lot of photojournalists as well that are out in the streets helping document this so that we can learn from it. And so we're trying to get sort of a public announcement for people to understand that just like a cell phone, a camera can be pretty contagious.
Absolutely.
The memory card, the battery grip. And so, they should stay protected. And
no, for me, it's coming very handy. Very handy.
Yeah, that's good to hear. Yeah, but no, that's, I think we're all trying to stay positive and stay productive. And so not only documenting some of this, but some of the charitable stuff that you're doing is commendable. Let me see. Are there any other topics or any other things that you wanted to address, Brian?
I really can't, it's a very strange time we're living in now, and I think we need to all, try and keep as positive as we can, support one another. A lot of us are at home not doing anything because, at least for me, my work is on the road, so I'm home now. But reach out to people and see how they're doing, and we're all in this together.
Well, I always enjoy chatting with you. I by our team, and it's always fun. So we'll have to do it again sometime.
We'd love to.
Stay safe, stay positive, and let's hope that we get to either ride or photograph together in person soon.
I hope so.
And don't forget to follow Brian at Velo Images on Instagram. We also have his page on outex.com, and we're going to be updating his profile there so that you can find more of his work. And thanks for joining us. We'll see everybody soon.
Take care, guys.
Thanks again, Brian.
Okay. Bye.
Be good.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Just a reminder that this series is sponsored by Outex, water housings that allow speakers like the ones you're watching to take care of their business in any environment, even underwater, with complete control over their camera and lens, glass ports, and a modular solution. You can follow us, like, and subscribe on all of our social media channels, and learn a lot more at outex.com, where we have links to the community and much more.